5-Minute Professor, and today's lesson is on the Amtrak. Amtrak is the national passenger rail system. It was established back in 1970. Richard Nixon. Yeah. Today, Amtrak runs 300 trains a day to over 500 destinations. That's over 21,200 miles of track every single day. Service runs to 46 states and the District of Columbia, which is where Amtrak is headquartered. And through the 1960s, freight rail lines in the U.S. were obligated to also run passenger routes. As passenger traffic slowed due to the interstate highway systems and the availability of airline travel, passenger services were just barely scraping by until 1966. In 1966, the U.S. Postal Service decided that it would be cheaper and easier to fly mail from city to city than to drive it from distribution center to distribution center. Without the postal carrying fees, passenger rail service was no longer just barely making it. They were definitely not making it. Enter the federal government and the Richard Nixon administration. Just to remind you, the Richard Nixon administration thought it was okay to put a freeze on rents and payroll and taxes. This was the Richard Nixon plan. Prices. You couldn't raise the price of milk. And you think Obama's a communist. Anyway, the Rail Passenger Service Act of 1970 allowed for freight rail lines to pay a one-time entry fee of either trains or cash and shift their passenger service to the federal government's Amtrak program starting in May of 1971. And if you did not opt in, you were obligated to run your passenger service through at least 1975. The idea from a government and industry perspective was that it would prove too costly to run and the government would just shut it down. They just celebrated an unexpected 40th anniversary. Today, 31 million passengers travel by Amtrak annually. That's about 1 in 10 Americans. In 2011, there were $2 billion in revenue, which covered about 79% of the operating costs. The 2012 budget had $1.5 billion from the general fund going to Amtrak, and 2013 had about a 30% increase. Most of the federal money covers infrastructure costs and new equipment. The political football nature of the budget prevents any sensible long-term fiscal planning because the Republicans keep saying they're going to defund Amtrak because make or break is $2 billion in the federal government. Amtrak operates primarily by leasing track time from local railroads, but Amtrak does own 730 miles of track, 17 tunnels, and almost 1,200 bridges. Amtrak employs about 20,000 Americans in relatively skilled union jobs, represented in part by the Brotherhood of the Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. Southwest Airlines, by comparison, has about 8 times the revenue of Amtrak, but only twice as many employees. There are fewer deaths per 100,000 passenger miles than cars or motor coaches, buses, fewer than 0.3 every 100,000 passengers. That's slightly more than airplanes. The busiest Amtrak stations are New York City's Penn Station, DC's Union Station, Philadelphia's 3rd Street Station, the Union Stations in Chicago and Los Angeles, and Boston's South Station. Perceptum, quispium, damnitium. Learn something, damn it. I'm the 5-Minute Professor, and thank you very much for listening to today's lesson. If you have any comments at all, please put them in the comments section down below. And of course, like it and subscribe to the channel. But most important, if you liked it, if you commented, and if you subscribed, tell your friends. Perceptum, quispium, damnitium. Learn something, damn it.